One of the major events that took place in Spain happened between the years of 1936 and 1939, and this is the Spanish Civil War, La Guerra Civil. This war was a precursor to World War II. There are a lot of elements leading up to World War II that during World War II presented themselves, but also presented themselves in Spain a few years earlier. So, why? ¿Por qué empezó? Why did this happen? And it's complex. This is an issue that is deep in the culture of Spain. A lot of people who lived there at the time were poor. So poverty was a really big factor. Also, there was the recent end of a military dictatorship. So, for a little bit of context, in 1930, the military dictatorship that was run by Miguel Primo de Rivera, who had been in power for like 7 or 8 years, was overtaken and sort of a coup, which is how in 1931 the Spanish Republic comes around. So the Republicans, which you can see at the bottom, they won this election essentially, or a coup, whatever you want to call it, and they were in power in 1931. And the end of this military dictatorship that had spanned for 7 or 8 years ended. And we have nationalists who supported that dictatorship and or wanted at least to have a different power than what the Republicans wanted to have in power. And so those differing schools of thought caused a lot of problems. People weren't respecting each other's opinions. It's basically what it came down to. We're going to come back to Guernica. So quién estuvo contra quién en esta guerra? So we have los republicanos. Los republicanos were secular. Secular means that in their daily lives, they did not want to have religion play a part of the government. They wanted separation. They wanted to have just religion be its own thing. You can still be religious and secular, but they just didn't want it to be a part of the daily lives. Where los nacionalistas, they have a very strong center around Roman Catholicism and the Catholic Church. Los republicanos have many different thoughts. They have anarchists, communists, centrists, whereas los nacionalistas, they wanted to have a traditional Spain. And they are very capable militaristically, whereas los republicanos, they're not organized in that way. They're not organized as a military or in any way. A lot of them are farmers who end up taking arms against the military of Spain at the time. So you have a lot of people who are not trained in warfare and a lot of other people who are trained in warfare fighting against each other. And the nacionalistas were led by General Francisco Franco. This was an important battle because Los Republicanos really had like ideology that was close to communism, but they wanted things to be equitable for the people. And for that reason, the Soviet Union, who was at the time communist, really wanted to put some stock behind Los Republicanos in Spain. So they provided Los Republicanos with specialists, machinery, and weaponry. And the Nacionalistas were really closely in line with fascism. And fascism was pretty rampant in some areas of Europe at the time. Two big players were Germany and Italy, who formed a part of the Axis in World War II. And seeing this opportunity to have another power rise before World War II, as things were starting to bubble up, Germany offered machinery, weaponry, and Guernica, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then Italy offered soldiers, weaponry, and machinery to the Nacionalistas. So we started having these two factions squaring off against each other. So Guernica, it's important to talk about. Guernica is a really important moment in the Spanish Civil War. You have General Francisco Franco, who's leading the Nacionalistas. He decides to, with the help of Germany, bomb a town in Spain called Guernica. So again, at the time, Francisco Franco is not necessarily the leader. He's trying to be, but he's bombing his own country, citizens, men, women, children, not armies, just people going about their daily lives. They get bombed. And this sends a message, a very strong message, that they're going to stop at nothing to win this war. And this painting, which you can see, is the most common symbol of the Spanish Civil War. It was done by Pablo Picasso, and it represents the bombings that occurred on April 26, 1937 in Guernica. Pablo Picasso has this style of painting. It's very, it's like impressionistic or very different. As you can see, there are a lot of different things going on here, but there's actually some imagery in here that is pretty neat. Things like this light bulb that you can see up here. It's a light bulb, but it also looks like a bomb going off. You also have things like this knife looking like it's going to stab people in the back or front. I don't know. It's Picasso. You can't really tell. But things like that. That's Picasso saying, look at this guy who would bomb his own country. He would stab his own country in the back. Also can't see it very well, but you can see a bull over here, and a bull tail, but also it sort of forms, instead of a bull and its back and tail, it also forms like a volcano looking, or a hill looking like it's smoking, like the hills near Guernica smoking. Looks like the town that's been leveled. This is the most famous symbol, and if you want to see this, you can go to the Reina Sofia in Madrid, España, and you will see this awesome painting, and it is humongous. It is, I mean, it's gigantic. I don't know exactly how big it is, but it takes up an entire wall, and it's a big, big, big wall. This painting's like 20 feet tall or something like that. It's huge. So yeah, if you get a chance, you should check it out. So moving forward, March 30, 1939, Franco takes over Madrid, la capital de España, and he declares himself el caudillo, or the chief of state. And 500,000 or more people died during the Spanish Civil War, which ends in 1939 when Franco takes over Madrid. And Franco stays in power from then on until 1975, when he abdicates and eventually dies. So España después de Franco. España during Franco's time was very closed off to the rest of the world. It was very hard to go there. It was tightly run, and it was not very open to new ideas and things like that. But in 1975, that changes. Franco declares Juan Carlos I, who is the grandson of Alfonso VIII, who was previously king. He declares Juan Carlos I king, his successor. And then, so in that case, Franco is taking away the monarchy, the dictatorship rather, and restoring the monarchy to Juan Carlos I. And then Franco dies. Juan Carlos I creates a new constitution. And this creates a constitutional monarchy, which is essentially, I believe, what Britain has. It allows for democracy. It allows for people to have a say in what they want to happen in the country. And I'll explain that more in a minute. But the current king of Spain is Felipe VI. He took over in 2014 when his father abdicated the throne, and he is reigning to this day. But this new constitution ended the dictatorship. It gave universal suffrage, meaning everybody had the right to vote. All the political parties were once again legal, which is important. You want to have freedoms in your government. The constitutional monarchy is now what they have as their law system of laws. The monarchs had to make the laws according to the rules and regulations of the Constitution. So this new Constitution includes a Congress. So what that means is there are people who get to be Congress people or some sort of representative, and these representatives get to try and debate things and make laws. There are often multiple parties that do this, and there is also still a king. And the king could take over in times of war. The king would take over, I think, can sign things into law. But essentially, the king doesn't do a ton more than that other than guide the nation forward, while the Congress and the Constitution can guide the people to help make laws moving forward. And Spain now is part of the European Union, meaning that they, with a bunch of other countries, form a union in Europe where they all have the same currency. They have a lot of trade that go between each other. They can help each other out sometimes, and they can also travel easily between those countries, creating a lot of commerce. And then also, it's important to note that even though the Spanish Civil War ended and Spain is unified now, there are still zones that fight to want to have some sort of separation from Spain. One is up here, Galicia. They don't do too much anymore, but their culture is very different. We also have Catalonia over here where Barcelona is. They absolutely still want to be separate, but Spain as a nation does not want them to be separate because this region of Catalonia is very prosperous. Their GDP is very high, and the country of Spain would not want to see Barcelona or Catalonia separate because it would make the rest of Spain poorer. Um, and but Barcelona and Catalonia, they do want to be their own area because they're kind of propping up some of Spain or the rest of Spain currently. Additionally, another area that has a lot of want to be separate is this area up here called the Basque region. You can see País Vasco, San Sebastian, Pamplona, and France, and they want to separate from France and Spain. Very much so in Spain. This region wants to be its own area. As they're less prosperous than Catalonia, it's not as realistic, but they have a very rich history of people who have been there for a very long time, who have a different language and different culture other than Spanish. And they do speak Spanish as well, but their language is ancient. They've been there for thousands of years and they just want to be separate. So there are still areas that do want to separate, but nonetheless, because of the Spanish Civil War, things did get unified. And once Francisco Franco turned over the reins to the Republic, now they have a constitutional monarchy. So that's what I got for you guys for the Spanish Civil War.